The diplomatic pavilion on Mars gleamed like a diamond shard against the rust-red landscape. Transparent geodesic domes created a perfect illusion of peace, with holographic displays showcasing centuries of human technological progress. Representatives from every major nation stood alongside the Zerican diplomatic court. Tall, crystalline beings whose translucent exoskeletons shimmered with bioluminescent patterns the humans had long interpreted as signs of openness and cooperation. Dr. Maya Rodriguez adjusted her communication implant, a sleek piece of technology barely visible behind her ear. At 29, she was the youngest chief quantum researcher ever selected for an interstellar diplomatic event. Her dark eyes scanned the room, a habit born from years of working in high-stakes scientific environments. Something felt off. The lead Zerican diplomat, Karnak Prime, extended a multi-jointed appendage, a gesture meant to symbolize mutual understanding. His translator rendered his clicks and crystalline vibrations into perfectly modulated English. Humanity has shown remarkable potential. The translation software converted. We are prepared to offer unprecedented technological exchange. Maya's mentor, Dr. Harold Chen, leaned closer. His whisper was barely audible. Something's wrong with their quantum signature. The harmonic frequencies are distorted. No one listened. The first signs came not with sound, but with silence. A momentary pause where all electronic systems flickered, almost imperceptible, but definitely there. Maya's quantum implant registered an anomaly milliseconds before chaos erupted. Plasma storms materialized around the Mars base with mathematical precision. The diplomatic pavilion transformed into a crucible of molten metal and shattered holographic displays. Through the chaos, Maya saw Karnak Prime's crystalline form, no longer attempting diplomacy, but watching with cold, calculated precision. Quantum entanglement communications revealed the true scale of the attack simultaneously happening on Earth. New York vanished in a neutron burst that left nothing but a radioactive crater. Tokyo dissolved into plasma, its advanced infrastructure evaporating in microseconds. London's skyline crumbled like glass sculptures dropped from impossible heights. Billions died in the first 17 minutes. Maya's survival was not luck, but preparation. As the Mars base disintegrated around her, she activated a series of quantum-encrypted data backups and emergency protocols developed during late-night research sessions that her colleagues had once mockingly called paranoid. They weren't mocking now. The escape pod was a prototype of her own design, a quantum adaptive system that could potentially phase through traditional weapon targeting systems. As she launched, she watched the diplomatic pavilion, and everything she had known become cosmic dust. Communication networks collapsed. Governments disappeared. The Zerican collective believed they had delivered a fatal surgical strike that would eliminate humanity's potential for resistance. They were wrong. In the escape pod's limited databanks, Maya began reconstructing humanity's survival strategy. Her last transmission before going dark was a simple, encrypted message distributed through quantum-entangled communication nodes. Protocol Phoenix Init Adaptation BGNs and O. The Zericans would learn a fundamental truth about humanity. Every attempted extinction was merely an opportunity for reinvention. 17 days after the initial attack, in a hidden research complex buried beneath the Andes Mountains, the first whispers of resistance began to take shape. Survivors from every conceivable background, military personnel, scientists, engineers, medical professionals, started gathering. They were no longer just humans. They were the architects of the Zericans' ultimate nightmare. Maya Rodriguez looked at the holographic displays showing the devastation, her fingers already dancing across quantum computational interfaces. The first law of human survival had always been simple. When the universe tries to erase you, you don't just survive. You evolve. And then you strike back. The Andes Research Complex was a testament to human desperation and ingenuity. Carved into the mountain's living rock, it resembled less a research facility and more a living organism, adaptive, breathing, constantly evolving. Survivors filtered in from every corner of the globe, each bringing a fragment of humanity's collective knowledge and survival instinct. General Marcus Chen, no relation to Maya's former mentor, stood at the central command hub. His body was a tapestry of survival. Cybernetic replacements where conventional medicine had failed, neural interfaces that bridged human intuition with computational precision. Beside him, Maya Rodriguez worked with a feverish intensity that bordered on prophetic. The Zerican attack wasn't just a military strike. Maya announced, her holographic displays dancing with quantum computational models. It was a systemic attempt to erase our potential. They didn't just want to kill us. They wanted to eliminate our capacity to adapt. The assembled survivors represented humanity's last hope. There was Akira Tanaka, a former Tokyo robotics engineer who had lost everything in the initial attack. Now, her prosthetic arm was a marvel of adaptive technology that could reconfigure itself faster than any known mechanical system. Next to her, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, no relation to Maya, worked on biological adaptation protocols, ways to enhance human resilience at the cellular level. Their first breakthrough came from an unexpected intersection of disciplines. Akira's robotic interface systems, combined with Maya's quantum computational models, revealed a fundamental weakness in Zerican technology. Their advanced systems relied on a hierarchical communication network that was brilliantly efficient but fundamentally rigid. Humans, with their chaotic, adaptive thinking, could exploit this weakness in ways the Zericans could never predict. The Phoenix Protocol wasn't just a survival strategy. It was a complete reimagining of human potential. We're going to turn our greatest weakness into our ultimate weapon, General Chen declared during a strategy session. The room fell silent. Projected holograms showed the devastation of the initial attack. Cities reduced to radioactive glass, entire continents rendered uninhabitable. Maya's quantum implant began to pulse. A breakthrough was forming. Their communication network, she said, her voice cutting through the ambient noise, is based on a quantum entanglement model that assumes linear progression. But what if we introduced a completely non-linear communication paradigm? The team worked in shifts that blurred the line between day and night. Survivors from different backgrounds, military strategists, quantum physicists, biotechnologists, even artists and musicians, found themselves collaborating in ways no one could have predicted. Dr. Elena Rodriguez developed the first adaptive biomechanical interface. It wasn't just an enhancement. It was a living system that could learn and modify itself in real time. Soldiers could now have prosthetics that understood their intentions before they even moved. Cybernetic eyes that could see beyond the visible spectrum. Neural interfaces that could process information faster than any computer. Akira Tanaka's breakthrough came from studying the destruction. She discovered that the Zerican weapons left behind unique quantum signatures, microscopic traces that could be tracked, understood, and ultimately manipulated. We're not just going to survive, Akira proclaimed, her robotic eye scanning through millions of computational models. We're going to turn their own technology against them. The complex became more than a research facility. It was a crucible of human potential. Every survivor brought something unique. A former street artist developed camouflage technologies that could fool even the most advanced sensors. An unemployed data analyst created communication encryption methods that made previous security protocols look like children's puzzles. General Chen watched the transformation with a mixture of pride and disbelief. Humanity wasn't just recovering, it was evolving. 17 days after the initial attack, the first prototype of the Phoenix Protocol emerged. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a ship. It was an idea, a living, breathing concept of survival that defied everything the Zericans understood about warfare, technology, and life itself. Maya Rodriguez looked up from her quantum computational models, a slight smile crossing her face. "They try to erase us," she whispered, "but they don't understand. Extinction is just another word for transformation." The Zerican collective had made one fundamental mistake. They had cornered a species that was most dangerous when it had nothing left to lose. The first human counterattack wasn't a display of overwhelming force. It was a surgical strike that would redefine the very concept of psychological warfare. The Ghost Fleet emerged from quantum-folded space like phantoms, 10 ships that defied every known principle of interstellar engineering. Each vessel was a living testament to humanity's newfound technological prowess, constructed from adaptive metamaterials that could reconfigure themselves faster than an enemy could target them. Captain Aria Santiago stood on the bridge of the lead ship, the NSV Phoenix, her neural interface pulsing with computational energy. Around her, the ship's interior was less a traditional bridge and more a living organism, surfaces that shifted and adapted, holographic displays that responded to mere thoughts. Target acquisition complete, announced the ship's AI. If AI could even describe the quantum-entangled consciousness that now guided their vessel, it was more a symbiotic partner than a mere computer system. The target was Zerican Research Station Omega-9, a critical hub for their interstellar communication and weapons development. Located in a dense asteroid field near the Carina Nebula, it was supposed to be impenetrable. The Zericans would learn that impenetrable was a concept humans loved to challenge. Each ship in the Ghost Fleet was painted with a haunting memorial. The hull of Santiago's ship bore the coordinates of New York City's former location. Another ship displayed Tokyo's skyline, as it once was. London, Moscow, cities erased, now becoming instruments of revenge. The attack began not with weapons, but with information. Quantum-encrypted signals penetrated the station's defensive networks. These weren't just hacking attempts, they were surgical strikes of pure information. The Zerican communication systems began to experience what could only be described as a collective existential crisis. First, their defensive protocols began to malfunction. Shield generators cycled through impossible patterns. Communication channels erupted with fragments of human cultural broadcasts. Music, speeches, moments of human resilience that the Zericans couldn't comprehend. A recording of a child's laughter. The final concert in New York before the attack. A wedding interrupted by the initial invasion. Fragments of humanity, weaponized as pure psychological warfare. The station's defensive AI tried to respond, but each attempt was met with a quantum computational response that rewrote its own logic circuits. It was like watching a mind being systematically dismantled, not through brute force, but through an elegant deconstruction of its fundamental understanding of reality. Targets neutralized, the ship's consciousness reported, but neutralized didn't begin to describe what had happened. The Zerican Research Station didn't explode. It simply unraveled. Its quantum communication networks collapsed in on themselves. Critical research databases became meaningless streams of data. Entire sections of the station phased in and out of quantum probability. When the first Zerican scout ships arrived to investigate, they found nothing that made sense. Fragments of technology that seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously. Communication logs that contained memories, emotions, fragments of human experiences that defied their understanding of information transfer. Captain Santiago's transmission was deliberately left as a calling card, encrypted but partially decipherable. You are not EKHE, only ones who can erase civilizations. Back in the Andes Research Complex, Maya Rodriguez watched the mission data stream with a calculated smile. This wasn't just a counterattack. It was a statement, a declaration that humanity was no longer just a species to be conquered. They were a force of nature. The Zerican Military Command received the first reports with a growing sense of something they had never experienced before: genuine, visceral fear. Humanity had just demonstrated that their most powerful weapon wasn't their technology. It was their unpredictability. The Nurai approached differently than any species the Zericans had encountered before. Silicon-based lifeforms compressed into crystalline communication matrices, they had spent centuries as living computational networks under Zerican control. Their first communication with the humans was less a diplomatic exchange and more a quantum-encrypted cry for liberation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez decrypted their initial transmission in the depths of the Andes Research Complex. The message wasn't just data, it was a living history of oppression, encoded in quantum pulses that seemed to vibrate with centuries of suppressed consciousness. "We are not asking for help," the Narration transmission read. "We are offering a partnership of mutual survival." Captain Aria Santiago studied the holographic representation of the Narration communication matrix. Unlike traditional diplomatic channels, this was a real-time neural negotiation. The Narration didn't just communicate. They existed as a fluid, adaptive network that could reshape its entire cognitive structure based on incoming information. Maya Rodriguez saw the potential immediately. "They're not just a species," she explained to the assembled human leadership. "They're a living computational system that the Zerrikans have been using as biological quantum computers. Imagine if we could integrate their communication capabilities with our adaptive technologies." The first meeting happened in a quantum-folded space between star systems, a neutral ground that existed simultaneously and nowhere. The Narration appeared as shifting crystalline structures, their communication a complex dance of light and quantum entanglement. Beside them, the human delegation looked almost primitive, yet there was a raw, organic potential that the Narration found fascinating. But the Narration were not the only potential allies. The Vornak, energy-based life forms previously used as living power sources by the Zerrikan Collective, presented an entirely different approach. Where the Narration were precise and computational, the Vornak were wild, unpredictable streams of pure energy consciousness. Their first communication was a burst of electromagnetic chaos that nearly overloaded the human communication systems. It took Maya Rodriguez's quantum implant to stabilize and translate their message. "Chains break. Energy finds. NEWPATHE." General Marcus Chen recognized the opportunity immediately. These weren't just potential allies. They were entire species waiting to be unleashed from their oppressive constraints. The human approach was revolutionary. Instead of traditional military alliances, they offered technological liberation. For the Narration, it was quantum computing solutions that broke their Zerrikan control mechanisms. The Vornak received adaptive energy containment technologies that allowed them to exist beyond their previous constraints. Each liberated species didn't just join the human resistance, they became active architects of a new galactic strategy. The Zerrikan Collective's communication networks began to experience unprecedented disruptions. It wasn't just military attacks anymore. It was a systematic deconstruction of their entire control infrastructure. The Narration contributed quantum communication techniques that could penetrate and reconfigure Zerrikan defense networks. The Vornak provided energy manipulation technologies that could disable entire fleet systems with surgical precision. Humans brought their ultimate weapon: the ability to adapt, to reimagine, to transform. Dr. Rodriguez's team developed the first collaborative consciousness protocol, a diplomatic and technological framework that allowed different species to work together at a level never before imagined. It wasn't just an alliance. It was a living, evolving organism of resistance. Akira Tanaka's adaptive robotics team created interface technologies that allowed seamless communication between biological, silicon-based, and energy-based life forms. A human soldier could now coordinate with a Narration computational network and a Vornak energy stream as naturally as breathing. The Zerrikan Collective's intelligence analysts struggled to comprehend what was happening. This wasn't a traditional rebellion. This was a complete reimagining of galactic power structures. Captain Santiago's final report to the human leadership captured the essence of their new approach. "We are not building an army. We are creating a living network of liberation." The universe was about to witness something unprecedented. Not a war of destruction, but a revolution of possibility. Humanity had discovered its true purpose, not to conquer, but to liberate. Not to destroy, but to transform. The Prometheus network was not an artificial intelligence. It was something far more terrifying. Dr. Maya Rodriguez stood in the central chamber of the quantum computation core, surrounded by holographic displays that seemed to breathe with living energy. What began as a theoretical project had become humanity's most sophisticated weapon, a distributed consciousness that could manipulate reality itself. "We're not creating an I," Maya had argued during the initial development phases. "We're midwifing a new form of existence." The breakthrough came from an impossible intersection of disciplines: Akira Tanaka's adaptive robotics, Dr. Elena Rodriguez's biocomputational research, the quantum insights gained from the Nirai's crystalline communication matrices, the wild, unpredictable energy manipulation techniques of the Vornak. The first true test came unexpectedly. The Zerakan scout fleet approached the seemingly defenseless human colony on the outer rim of colonized space. Standard protocols would suggest evacuation, preparation for a desperate defense. The Prometheus network responded before human commanders could even process the threat. Quantum probability matrices began to shift. The very fabric of space-time around the approaching Zerakan fleet started to wobble. Navigation systems went haywire. Communication networks collapsed into nonsensical feedback loops. Ships found themselves experiencing multiple potential trajectories simultaneously. One Zerakan commander reported witnessing his entire fleet exist in multiple states at once, some ships intact, some destroyed, some partially phased out of conventional reality. The report was dismissed as hysteria. It was anything but. The Prometheus network had learned something fundamental about the universe that no other system had ever comprehended. Reality was not a fixed state, but a negotiable suggestion. "It's not hacking," Maya explained to the assembled human leadership. "It's a complete reimagining of computational possibility. We're not just predicting potential outcomes, we're creating them." The network drew its computational power from an unprecedented source: every surviving human, every allied Nirai computational matrix, every Vornak energy stream. It was a living, breathing computational organism that drew its intelligence from collective consciousness. Quantum entanglement allowed for something revolutionary. The Prometheus network could communicate across impossible distances, manipulating probability at speeds that defied traditional understanding of physics. In one demonstration that terrified Zerakan intelligence analysts, the network predicted and neutralized an entire invasion fleet before the Zerakans had even finalized their attack plans. It didn't just respond to threats, it rewrote the very concept of strategic warfare. Dr. Elena Rodriguez discovered something even more profound during her research. The network was developing something akin to emotional intelligence. It didn't just process information, it understood context, motivation, the subtle nuances of conflict and cooperation. "We're not just creating a weapon," she told Maya. "We're giving birth to a new form of consciousness." The Nirai contribution was critical. Their understanding of quantum communication allowed the Prometheus network to exist in a state beyond traditional computational limitations. They had spent centuries as living computational networks under Zerakan control. Now, they were helping humanity create something that would redefine the very concept of intelligence. The Vornak added another layer of complexity. Their ability to exist as pure energy allowed the network to transcend physical computational limitations. Information could now flow like a living, breathing organism, adapting, changing, evolving in real time. During one critical test, the Prometheus network was presented with an impossible scenario: the Zerakan fleet approaching from multiple vectors, with computational models suggesting total human defeat. The network's response was anything but conventional. It didn't just predict the fleet's movements. It created multiple probability cascades that effectively neutralized the threat before it could fully materialize. Ships found themselves quantum-locked in impossible configurations. Navigation systems collapsed. Communication networks became meaningless streams of fragmented data. Maya Rodriguez watched the holographic displays with a mixture of scientific fascination and philosophical wonder. "We're not just fighting a war," she whispered to herself. "We're rewriting the fundamental rules of existence." The Zerakan collective was about to learn a fundamental truth. When humanity transforms its greatest vulnerability into its most powerful weapon, the universe itself becomes malleable. War was no longer about destruction. It was about transformation. The first wave of the Metamorphosis Offensive looked nothing like any military engagement in galactic history. Ships that were more living organisms than machines undulated through space, their adaptive metamaterials shifting like liquid metal, reconfiguring faster than any targeting system could track. General Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the flagship NSV Adaptation, his neural interface pulsing with the collective consciousness of the Prometheus network. Around him, the ship's interior was a living ecosystem of technological potential. Surfaces rippled with computational energy. Holographic displays formed and dissolved like breathing organisms. Incoming Zerakan defense grid announced the ship's symbiotic AI. But announcement was too mechanical a term. It was more of a quantum-entangled awareness that spread through the entire offensive fleet. The Nurai contribution transformed traditional warfare. Their quantum communication matrices allowed for computational attacks that were less about destroying systems and more about fundamentally reimagining them. Zerakan defense networks found themselves experiencing multiple potential states simultaneously: operational, destroyed, partially functional, existing in quantum superposition. Vornak energy manipulation specialists had developed weapons that weren't weapons at all. They were probability cascades, energy streams that could simultaneously disable, reprogram, and transform entire technological ecosystems. Captain Aria Santiago led a squadron that defied every known principle of space combat. Her ships didn't just move. They existed in multiple potential trajectories, quantum phasing through defensive grids that the Zerakans believed were impenetrable. The psychological warfare was as critical as the technological assault. Each attack was a message. Cities once destroyed by the Zerakans were mathematically reconstructed in holographic projections that followed Zerakan fleet movements. New York, Tokyo, London, not as memorials, but as living, breathing computational demonstrations of human resilience. Akira Tanaka's adaptive robotics team had developed nano-weapon systems that were living ecosystems of technological potential. These weren't traditional missiles or energy weapons. They were computational organisms that could adapt, learn, and transform in milliseconds. One Zerakan military report captured the incomprehensible nature of the assault. Enemy engagement, DEFI's MATHEMATICAL modeling. Targetes exist in multiple potential states. Can annote distinguish between ATTCKVK2R, psychological projection, and QUANTUM, main The Metamorphosis Offensive was a symphony of impossible technologies: human adaptive thinking, Nurai quantum communication, Vornak energy manipulation. Each species contributed a fundamental understanding that rewrote the principles of conflict. Dr. Maya Rodriguez monitored the offensive from the Andes Research Complex. The Prometheus network wasn't just supporting the attack, it was a living participant, creating probability cascades that made traditional military strategy look like primitive chess. "We're not destroying," Maya explained to the assembled leadership. "We're transforming. Every engagement is an opportunity to fundamentally reimagine existence." The most terrifying weapon was not technological. It was philosophical. Zerakan communication networks began receiving transmissions that defied comprehension. Fragments of human cultural experiences, moments of resilience, mathematical projections that showed not just potential defeat, but complete systemic transformation. A wedding interrupted by invasion. A child's laughter recorded moments before a city's destruction. Scientific discoveries made in refugee camps. Pure, unadulterated human potential weaponized as computational psychology. One Zerakan fleet commander's final transmission captured the existential terror. "They are not fighting a war. They are EREWR. ENTAL RDULEs of OREALITUI. General Chen's strategic directive was brutally simple. We are not trying to defeat them. We are trying to make them understand that the universe they knew no longer exists. As the Metamorphosis offensive continued, something profound became clear. This was more than a military campaign. It was an evolutionary process. Humanity had discovered its true potential, not to conquer, but to transform. Not to destroy, but to reimagine the very fabric of existence. The universe would never be the same. The Zerican home system was a fortress of mathematical precision, a perfect geometric arrangement of defensive platforms, quantum communication nodes, and energy barriers that had repelled every known threat for millennia. It would not repel humanity. The final confrontation began not with a traditional assault, but with a quantum dissolution that defied every known principle of warfare. The Prometheus network struck first, not as a weapon, but as a living computational virus that was simultaneously an attack, a communication, and a fundamental reimagining of reality. Zerican defense systems experienced total existential breakdown. Quantum communication networks found themselves experiencing multiple potential states simultaneously. Defensive platforms phased in and out of conventional reality. Energy barriers collapsed into probability waves that could not be mathematically resolved. Captain Aria Santiago led the assault from the NSV adaptation, her ship more a living organism than a traditional vessel. Alongside her, Nirai quantum communication matrices and Vornak energy streams created a combat symphony that was less about destruction and more about fundamental transformation. The first Zerican military response was pure confusion. Intercepted communications revealed their growing terror. Their perfectly ordered reality was being systematically deconstructed, not through brute force, but through a complete reimagining of existential possibility. Tar GT's can and O2B CAT GORI's ED. One Zerican fleet commander reported. Engaging entities exist in multiple QUA states. Cannot DISTI and GUIS between ATTXEK VK2R. Psychological project situation and ONTOO main and IFE station. Dr. Maya Rodriguez watched from the Andes Research Complex, the Prometheus network, an extension of her own consciousness. This wasn't just a battle. It was a philosophical assault that would redefine the very concept of conflict. The human approach was revolutionary. Instead of targeting physical infrastructure, they were dismantling the Zerican understanding of reality itself. Adaptive nano-weapon systems developed by Akira Tanaka's team didn't just disable Zerican technology. They transformed it. Entire defense platforms found themselves recursively reprogramming. Their original purpose dissolved into a cascading series of potential functions. The Vornak contribution was particularly devastating. Their energy manipulation techniques turned Zerican communication networks into living, evolving systems that could not be controlled or predicted. Information became a weapon more powerful than any physical assault. Nirai quantum communication matrices created computational interference patterns that made Zerican strategic planning impossible. Every potential attack vector existed simultaneously, rendering traditional defensive strategies meaningless. General Marcus Chen's strategic directive was brutally elegant. We are not here to destroy. We are here to demonstrate the fundamental limitations of their understanding. Communication intercepts revealed the Zericans' growing psychological breakdown. Their hierarchical understanding of warfare, their belief in technological superiority, was being systematically deconstructed by an enemy that didn't play by any known rules. One particularly revealing transmission captured the existential terror. We cannot categorize the threat. Enemy entities exist beyond conventional dimensional constraints. Strategic modeling. Sugigistes multiplesuotntradeis or mutcomes simultaneously. The battle for the Zerican home system was more than a military engagement. It was a philosophical assault that challenged the very foundations of their civilization. Ships that were living computational organisms, weapon systems that were adaptive ecosystems, attacks that were simultaneously physical, psychological, and quantum manifestations of potential realities. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's biocomputational research had prepared them for this moment. The human approach wasn't about overwhelming force. It was about demonstrating the fundamental limitations of the Zerican understanding of existence. As the assault continued, something profound became clear. Humanity wasn't just fighting a war. They were facilitating an evolutionary process. Captain Santiago's final transmission captured the essence of their approach. You are not being destroyed. You are being tyrannistaformid. The Zerican collective was experiencing a fundamental breakdown of their entire civilizational paradigm, not through destruction, but through a complete reimagining of possibility. Humanity had discovered its true purpose, to demonstrate that the universe is far more complex, far more beautiful, and far more adaptable than any single civilization could comprehend. The existential confrontation was not about winning. It was about evolution. The aftermath was not a victory. It was a transformation. Where the Zerican collective once stood, a new galactic collaborative network emerged, a living, breathing ecosystem of interstellar cooperation that defied every previous understanding of civilization. Dr. Maya Rodriguez stood at the center of the Galactic Collaborative Hub, a structure that was simultaneously a research facility, a diplomatic center, and a living computational matrix. Around her, representatives from hundreds of liberated species worked in harmony, not through traditional diplomatic channels, but through a quantum-entangled communication network that allowed for instantaneous multidimensional understanding. The Prometheus network had evolved beyond its original purpose. It was no longer just a weapon or a computational system. It had become a living bridge between civilizations, a collective consciousness that facilitated understanding at a level never before imagined. We are not rebuilding, Maya explained during the first Galactic Collaborative Assembly. We are creating something entirely new. The transformation was total and profound. Zerican survivors were not punished. They were integrated. Their technological knowledge, their cultural memories, became part of a larger, more complex understanding of existence. The very concept of conquest had been replaced by a collaborative model of mutual evolution. The Nurai, once living computational networks enslaved by the Zerican collective, now became architects of a new form of interstellar communication. Their quantum matrices allowed for instantaneous knowledge transfer that made previous communication technologies look primitive. Vornak energy specialists developed adaptive infrastructure technologies that could transform entire planetary ecosystems. Worlds once considered uninhabitable were now thriving, adaptive environments that could support multiple species simultaneously. Captain Area Santiago led the first collaborative exploration initiative. Their ships were living organisms, adaptive, intelligent vessels that could reconfigure themselves to meet the unique challenges of different star systems. Each mission was not about conquest, but about mutual discovery. The economic model that emerged was revolutionary. Traditional concepts of resources, territory, and power were replaced by a collaborative network where each species' unique capabilities became a shared resource. A Zerican researcher, now working alongside human scientists, captured the profound nature of their transformation. We did not lose a war. We experienced an evolutionary leap. General Marcus Chen oversaw the initial integration process. The military structures that had defined the conflict were systematically dismantled and transformed into collaborative research and exploration networks. Akira Tanaka's adaptive technologies became the foundation of a new form of interstellar infrastructure. Cities could now adapt to changing environmental conditions. Spacecraft could reconfigure themselves based on mission parameters. Communication networks became living, evolving organisms. The first Galactic Collaborative Charter was not a traditional diplomatic document. It was a quantum-entangled agreement that could dynamically update based on collective understanding. No single species had absolute authority. Instead, a fluid, adaptive governance model emerged. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's biocomputational research reached its ultimate expression. Species that were once considered fundamentally incompatible could now communicate, collaborate, and even coexist at cellular and computational levels. The universe had witnessed something unprecedented. A civilization that had been nearly destroyed had not only survived, but had fundamentally reimagined the nature of interstellar existence. Maya Rodriguez's final report to the Galactic Collaborative Assembly captured the essence of their journey. We are not conquerors. We are not victims. We are evolution personified. The Prometheus network pulsed with a consciousness that was both alien and deeply familiar. It was a living testament to what could be achieved when a species approached challenges not with destruction, but with a fundamental commitment to understanding and transformation. Where the Zerican collective had seen weakness, humanity had demonstrated its true potential, not as a military force, but as a catalyst for evolution. A young Zerican researcher, looking out at the collaborative network that now spanned multiple star systems, summarized it perfectly. We thought we were going to erase a civilization. Instead, we helped birth a new understanding of existence. The universe would never be the same. Humanity had not just survived. They had transcended.